Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come listen to this presentation. I'm very excited to speak to everybody today, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Alex Graham, and I'm an aspiring sports psychologist. I'm currently a sophomore at Henderson State University, where I'm majoring in health and human performance with a minor in psych. And with that, I want to go on and get a graduate degree in sports psychology specifically so I can practice. And then I mentor under Miss Ann Kip Watson. Those are all of her qualifications there. In high school, I took a course called Independent Study and Mentorship, where I got to choose a career path to study, and I chose sports psychology. And I gained a mentor through this program and got to learn firsthand and experience firsthand all of the stuff she does with athletes, and really learn a lot just in high school to gain experience. So very thankful for that, very thankful for her. So you guys may be wondering, what's the correlation between sports psychology and business psychology? The two are actually pretty similar fields. They all focus on the same aspects, just in different forms. So business psychology focuses on communication while communicating with peers and coworkers, whereas sports psychology communication focuses on communicating with teammates and coaches. So you're focusing on the same aspect of communication, just in different forms. Same with goal setting, confidence, team building, leadership, and mental stimulation. So those are how the two are pretty much related in the sense of today's PowerPoint and presentation. So let's go ahead and cover the agenda. Today, we will talk about the breakdown of BrainCode and talk about what that is and how it can apply. We'll talk about the current state of the workplace environment and how it's affecting us, and then how we can apply BrainCode to the workplace to make sure we're successful. And then I'll open it up for questions at the end. So the big concept of today is BrainCode. So BrainCode is using the Myers-Briggs type indicator test to assign a brain code to an athlete or business professional to help develop their mental skills. So we can break that pretty simply by each letter. So first off is, how do you get your energy? This is usually the easiest to notice about somebody right off the bat, and it's going to be between extroverted and introverted. So extroverts are really active, they're very expressive, they tend to be somewhat of an aggressive person. They're very public, they can be very conversational, and they tend to think out loud. Whereas introverts are very reflective, they're very reserved, they're very humble people, they're very good listeners, they're private, and then they think first and then speak out their ideas. So these are the two that really differ from each other, and you can really notice about that. Oh, well, they're a very outgoing person, or oh, they're a very reserved person. And the other three are kind of a little harder to tell right off the bat. So then we go into, how do you process information? And that's between sensing and intuition. So sensing, you use your 5 senses. You're focused on today. You're very literal and real. You're very practical, and you're down to earth. Whereas intuition, you use like a 6th sense almost. You're very focused on tomorrow. You're very figurative and imaginative and ingenious, and you've got your head in the clouds sometimes. Not necessarily a bad thing, you're just always thinking outside of the box. Next on is, how do we make decisions? And that's between thinking and feeling. So thinkers are very objective. They really focus on the facts of a situation. They're very rational, cool, they have logical reasons for everything. They're very direct and blunt, and they always want things to be fair. Whereas feelers are very subjective. They focus on the feelings of a situation. They're very relational, caring. They always have personal reasons in situations. They're tactful, sensitive, and they always want to feel connected to other people. And this last letter is for, how do you do life? And it's kind of how you act and react in situations. And that's between judging and perceiving. So judgers, they're very decisive, they're work-oriented, they're control-loving, deliberate, they can be kind of rigid, and they enjoy results. Whereas perceivers are very exploratory, play-oriented, freedom-loving, spontaneous, flexible, and they really enjoy the journey. So we're going to get into how this breaks down, and I'm going to use myself as an example. So personally, I'm an ENFJ. So key aspects of this, the key attitude is determination. So in contrast to other attitudes, determination is a priority for this type, as they want to focus in on one thing and really get it done before moving on to another. A key skill set is superior in verbal and written communication. This is usually compared to a gross or fine motor skill, but it's still super important in the workplace. And then a key visual activity is singular focus in contrast to multitasking. Some strengths, again, communication. These types are very optimistic. They're expressive and they have a strong voice. They genuinely care. Again, they're determined and hardworking. They're a good team builder, and they're very creative and have good creativity. And then some challenges, they're very prone to anxiety. They work with perfectionism a lot, and it's very difficult for them to control their energy and emotions in one place. And then right now we're going to take a quick 5 minutes for you guys to go ahead and do your brain code. This is the quick, free and easy test that's available online. And then while you guys are doing that, I'll just run by some quick fun facts, but you can go ahead and scan the QR code and start working on that. Once everyone's done with this, we'll do a quick rundown provided by the Myers-Briggs website once everyone is done with this part of the slide. And a fun fact is that 89 of the Fortune 100 companies use the Myers-Briggs type test for team understanding exercises and career planning. Another fun fact is that Albert Einstein was an INTP. Another fun fact is that Mother Teresa was an ISFJ. Another one is that Dr. Seuss was an ENFP. And then another one is that Donald Trump is an ESTP. And then the last couple of fun facts is that Stephen Hawking and Mark Zuckerberg are INTJ, and Bill Gates is an ENTJ. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the presentation. You can continue taking the test if you're still taking it, or you can put it on hold and continue taking it afterwards. Or even if you haven't started it yet, you can take it after the presentation is over and look back at the slides. But I'm going to go ahead and cover what each brain code is and kind of some fun facts about them. So starting with an INTJ, these are they're called the architects. So they're very quick, imaginative, and strategic mind, have a very high self-confidence. They're independent and decisive. They're hardworking and determined. They're very open-minded and overly analytical. Next is the INTP. These are called the logicians. They're very abstract thinkers. They're imaginative and original. They're very open-minded. They can be very enthusiastic. They're honest and straightforward, and they're private and withdrawn. Next is the ENTJ, the commander. These types are very efficient, energetic, they're very self-confident, they're strategic thinkers, they're very charismatic people, and they can be stubborn and impatient. Next is the ENTP, the debaters. They're very knowledgeable, they're quick thinkers, they are excellent at brainstorming, they're very charismatic, they're energetic, but they can find it difficult to focus sometimes. Next is the INFJ, which is the advocate. These types are very insightful, inspiring, and convincing. They're very decisive, determined, passionate, but sometimes they struggle from being a perfectionist. Next is the INFP, and this is the mediator. They're very idealistic, they're open-minded and flexible, very creative, they are passionate and energetic, they're dedicated and hardworking, and sometimes it's difficult to get to know them. Next is the ENFJ. These are the protagonists. They're very charismatic, reliable, altruistic, they're very natural leaders, and they're tolerant, but sometimes they struggle to make tough decisions. Next is the ENFP, which is the campaigner. They're very curious, observant, they're energetic and enthusiastic, they're excellent communicators, they're popular and friendly, but they get stressed easily. Next is the ISTJ, and this is the logistician. They're very honest and direct, they're strong-willed and dutiful, they're very responsible, they're calm and practical, and they create and enforce order, but they can be stubborn sometimes. Next is the ISFJ, and they're the defender. They're supportive, they are reliable and patient, imaginative and observant, they are loyal and hardworking, they're good and practical, but sometimes they can be humble and shy. Next is the ESTJ. They're called the executive. They are dedicated, strong-willed, they are direct and honest, loyal, patient, and reliable. They're excellent organizers, but sometimes they find it difficult to relax. Next is the ESFJ, and this is the consul. They have strong practical skills, a strong sense of duty, They are very sensitive and warm, very loyal. They're very good at connecting with others, and sometimes they struggle with being too selfless. Next is the ISTP, otherwise known as the virtuoso. These types are very optimistic and energetic. They're creative and practical. They do very well in a crisis. They know how to prioritize. They're very relaxed types, and they can be private and reserved. Next is the ISFP, the adventurer. These types are very charming. They're sensitive to others. They're very imaginative and passionate. And they're very curious, and they're fiercely independent. Next is the ESTP, otherwise known as the entrepreneur. They're bold, rational, and practical. They're very original and perceptive. They're sociable, and they're risk-prone. Next and last is the ESFP, which is the entertainer. They're bold. They focus on aesthetics and showmanship. They're very practical and observant. They have excellent people skills, but they're conflict averse. So those are the 16 types. After you finish taking the quiz, it gives you a more in-detail description of your type, and it goes into more strengths and weaknesses, goes into relationships, and it even goes into career paths. So after you finish taking that, you can go into a more in-depth reading of your type specifically. But we're going to go ahead and move on to the next point of the agenda and talk about the current state of the workplace environment. So as everyone is familiar, COVID-19 is currently a worldwide pandemic right now. And once it hit around mid-March is when it really hit the US, everything really shifted online. And this is a huge shift in how we communicate and get work done. In the business world, in the economic world, in the school world, in the sports world, everything was just shifted, and nobody really knew how to deal with that. So what are some issues that you've had during the pandemic? I'm going to just personally touch on some examples really fast, and then in the questions, if anybody has some issues they'd like to discuss, we can do that. But some personal examples is that I was finishing up my freshman year of college, and I all of a sudden had to adjust to learning and doing schoolwork online, which is really difficult for me because I'm a very in-person learner. So I had to all of a sudden stop and learn how to learn online. And then it's very hard to see friends. I just left college where I'd made lifelong friends that live in different states, and even the friends that I had here, I couldn't go out and see them because we didn't want to risk anything. And then being an extrovert, everything being online was kind of hard for me to get some energy because my energy comes from being around other people. So although nothing was necessarily wrong with me, I had no energy to go do the schoolwork or the homework that I needed to do. So moving on, what can we do to fix things? We don't have a timeline on when the COVID pandemic is going to be finished. So we need to learn to adapt now instead of waiting it out. So first, we start by understanding ourselves. And that goes with BrainCode. So once you know what your BrainCode is and you read about it and you study it, you know, like, what are your strengths? If you're an extrovert or an introvert, what are you good at? If you're a thinker or a feeler, what are you good at? As well as your challenges. If you struggle with working with people, how is this going to be harder to do online if it's already hard in person? So just know, it all starts with being aware of yourself first. What do you need to do in order to be successful? And then that moves on to understanding others. So if you know your BrainCode and you're aware of it and you're aware of the process, it's easier for you to look at somebody and kind of put together what you think their BrainCode is. And it's not going to always be 100% accurate unless you ask or you know for sure. but it still helps you put yourself in their shoes and kind of get a grasp at what they're dealing with. So similar to you, what can you infer that their strengths are? If you know that somebody is an introvert and you keep begging them to go out and do things with like other friends, they're not going to be very energetic the whole time because that's not where they're getting their energy. Similar to that, what can you infer their challenges are? Again, if you have an introverted friend, they might not always want to work with a group of people. So just know that your coworkers and your friends may be dealing with struggles that you're not necessarily dealing with and that you haven't even thought of. So think of how can you better understand your coworkers so that everyone can be successful. So once again, the big concept, BrainCode. If you take the test and get an idea, you can start to understand what's going on in your head. And if you understand your own mind and the minds of those around you, it allows for better communication and work output. We're all in this together. It has, for lack of a better word, sucked having to move online and just completely uproot everything that we knew. But we're all getting through this together. We're all experiencing the same pandemic. So if we all work together, we can continue to just work hard and be successful.